Hello everyone, this is James at the Martial Archive. I watched Anita a few days ago and I've been spending a few days thinking about exactly what I want to say in this video. This shouldn't be considered a review exactly, it's more my thoughts on what was right and what was wrong about Anita. Talking factually rather than whether it had good cinematography or not and all that stuff. If you haven't seen Anita already, there will definitely be some spoilers in here, so maybe you should go and watch it before you watch this video. So Anita is a biopic, a dramatic reenactment of the life of Hong Kong singer and actress Anita Mui Yim Fong, who died in 2003 of cervical cancer. Now, I hesitate to use the word biopic because there are many factual errors. There are some things that are wrong for political reasons, and there are some things that are wrong, I don't know why, they just are. So I'm going to talk about some of that and my feelings about how it could have been better, mainly. So, before I do, I'll be the first to admit I am not particularly a fan of Anita Mui the singer. The only song of hers that I like is her most famous song, Song of Sunset, which was the theme tune to the movie A Better Tomorrow 3. So if you've seen that movie, the song at the end, beautiful piece of music. I've listened to that song dozens and dozens of times. It's really nice. Most of her other music, typical canto pop, not particularly impressed with any of what I've heard, frankly. So, I'm not a big fan of her music. I'm also not a big fan of Anita Mui, the actress. I generally find her roles quite boring in the case of dramas like Rouge and Last Princess of Manchuria. I don't like those films. When she tries to do comedy like in Drunken Master 2, I find her quite irritating. There are a couple of films where she was quite good, such as Miracles and Heroic Trio, which is an excellent film. Part 2 not so much, but Heroic Trio Part 1 I really like, is very good. So, I'm not a big fan of her as an actress either. So why did I watch it and why do I care? Well, at the time of her death, I was publishing a magazine called Oriental Film Review, and I was quite well keyed into what was going on in Hong Kong at the time. There were a few particular websites which were very interesting, produced by people in Hong Kong, where you could keep up to date with all the latest news, what's going on with the celebrities over there. Sadly, those websites don't seem to exist anymore, but I was really well clued into what was going on. And I really appreciated Anita Mui, the person. I didn't really appreciate her as an artist, but I appreciated her as a person. She was very opinionated, outspoken, she stood up for what she believed in. She was a workaholic with a very good work ethic. She was heavily involved in charity. She did many good things, and she was known as Big Sister in the Hong Kong entertainment community, which tells you a lot. And she was best friends with Leslie Cheung, who was known as Big Brother, despite the fact he was younger than many of the people who called him that. And Leslie Cheung is one of the places where they got things particularly wrong in Anita. So let's start at the start with the factual errors. She was one of 4 children, but to watch Anita, you'd think she only had one sister. She did have a mother and father, although they're not mentioned at all in Anita. Her mother opened a medicine shop, and her father was apparently quite a nasty drunk who would beat the kids. He died when she was quite young, when she was like 4 years old or something. But Anita just cuts them out completely, along with her other sister and her brother. They're just completely missing. So for that alone, you can't really call Anita a biopic because they changed too much stuff. It's just not true. when you make a biopic, it's biographical, it's supposed to be the truth, whatever that may be. And while you can take certain amounts of artistic license, and you can invent scenarios that you think probably happened, or based on what other people said about that person, to just change the facts and cut people out completely is wrong. So I would say that this is based on her life, but is not a biopic of her life, which is sad. It was produced by Benz Kong, who is a very good friend of Anita, and he's been trying for years to get this film made because he really, really liked her. She was going to be in his film House of Flying Daggers until she died. Unfortunately, she became too sick to participate in the film, and rather than recast it, they just cut out her part completely. And it's a shame, it would have been nice to have seen her in that. But she just said, no, I'm too sick, I can't do it. And that's just the way it was. So anyway, Benz Kong spent a long time preparing for the film. They had a year of pre-production, during which time they spoke to many people who knew Anita. So most of the stuff that's in there is probably factually pretty correct. But unfortunately, the film seems very unfocused. It's very scattershot here and there, and they go backwards and forwards in time, and I got a bit confused by that. And they don't really focus on the interesting parts. They miss out a lot of stuff. To watch the film Anita, you would think that Rouge was her first movie, when in fact she made at least 10 movies before that. She made 47 movies in total, and they only make reference to 2 of them, Rouge and Justice My Foot. And it does seem like rather an omission because they took a large part of her life. And there were certain incidents which were alluded to, but they didn't elaborate upon. Particularly, she was well known for a popular song of hers called Bad Girl, and they do make reference in Anita that she was doing a concert and they didn't want her to sing it, and she did it anyway and said they can ban me if they want. What it didn't make clear was that this was during a concert series in mainland China, and the Chinese government were worried that it was pornographic, the music video particularly. Well, not so much a video, but the stage show that she put on with men wearing leather thongs with metal studs on them. I've seen pictures. And on the last day of the concert series, as the last song, she performed it anyway as a big up you to the Chinese government, which she seems to have problems with. Particularly because of Tiananmen Square. She was a big supporter of Tiananmen Square remembrance groups, and supposedly spent a lot of her hard-earned money to help Tiananmen people flee mainland China when the government was trying to persecute them. So she did this song anyway. The Chinese government banned her, and she said, I don't care, I'm never performing in mainland China again. I'm a Hong Konger, I love Hong Kong, I'll just stay in Hong Kong and I've got my fans there. Although after there was an earthquake in mainland China and there was a charity concert to raise money to help the people, she did go back to the mainland to perform at that concert because she was a very good person with a good heart, which is one of the things that I really appreciated about her. So that was fudged. They missed out the Tiananmen stuff completely because it's politically sensitive and you can't piss off the Chinese government these days, no matter what else you do. And that's really annoying because politics shouldn't come into art, but sadly it does. Another incident that was alluded to but not really elaborated upon in the way it might have been. There was an incident in a nightclub where a gangster, a triad, wanted her to sing for him and wanted her to appear in a movie, and she turned him down because she wasn't interested, and he slapped her. She made a phone call to someone, and somehow another triad member who really liked her found out about it, and in Anita they say that he got beaten up by some guys of this other gangster. What actually happened was 2 people got murdered over all of this. It was a long story with toing and froing, and they tried to hack off his hand at the wrist, but they didn't quite make it through. and then he was in hospital, and two people went to the hospital and asked which room he was in, and they went in and finished him off. So the actual real life incidents that followed the slap are actually rather interesting. There was a whole movie based on it called The Tiger of Wan Chai, which sadly is not a good movie. But they just totally glossed over all of that in Anita, and she had to leave the country. She went to Thailand and hid there for a few months whilst trying to sort out the problems. And all of the stuff in Anita about her being in Thailand was really rather boring, not particularly interesting at all. And they should have not wasted that time, and they should have focused it on more interesting events in her life. So another thing that was kind of wrong, after she returned from Thailand, she started doing a lot of charity stuff. And in Anita, they show her giving out free food to homeless people in Hong Kong. Well, if you look at the actual facts of the matter, she was involved in quite a number of things. So sorry, it wasn't an earthquake, it was a flood, the Eastern China flood in 1991. She established a nursing home in San Francisco, and in 1992 the mayor said that the 18th of April is Anita Mui Day. In 1993 she established the Anita Mui True Heart Charity Foundation, which raised a lot of money for charity. She was also one of the founders of the Hong Kong Performing Artists Guild, which I don't think the film Anita mentioned at all. The city of Toronto in Canada declared that the 23rd of October 1993 was Anita Mui Day. I don't know what she did for that, but they really liked her there. During the SARS or bird flu epidemic that they had in Asia, she decided that they needed to do something to help the people of Hong Kong. So Anita Mui, along with a friend of hers who was also at the Performing Artists Guild, spoke to all of the artists and got the singers to agree to perform in the 199 concert. There are some people who weren't sure that a concert was a good idea, but they managed to put it on anyway, and they raised a lot of money. In 2003, shortly before she died, Anita published a book called The Heart of the Modern Woman, talking about problems that women faced in society, and all of the profits from that book went to the Children's Cancer Foundation, and probably still do to this day, I don't know. On the 23rd of September 2004, sometime after Anita died, about a year after she died, there was the True Heart Digital Multimedia Studio that was open at the University of Hong Kong, which she paid for. So she did a lot of good things to help the people of Hong Kong, and they don't really go into that in the detail that they might have in Anita. If they weren't wasting time on the stuff in Thailand, they could have dedicated more time to that. Now, something that they alluded to, but again didn't really go into much detail, unfortunately. There was a documentary about Anita Mui that I saw a few years ago, which I cannot find at all. I didn't download it at the time because the website it was on wouldn't let me download it, and I couldn't find it anywhere else. And it now appears that it's completely gone. I cannot find it at all. I think it was made by the biography channel, A&E. They also did one about Leslie Chung, which you can still find online, and I have that one. But unfortunately, the Anita Mui one's just disappeared. There is one in Chinese language, but that's not the same one. So the documentary that I saw went into quite a lot of detail about her final days, especially, and it interviewed a lot of people who knew her well. And it really, really moved me. How sad her story actually was. And in Anita they show that the doctor said she should have a hysterectomy, she should have her womb removed. And she said, but if I do that I can never have children, right? And then they just cut and they don't say any more about it. She actually made a conscious choice, according to the documentary, that she would rather die than face the possibility of living without ever being able to have children. She wanted to have a family so desperately, and she never could because she could never find the right man. Well, she thought she found the right man, her Japanese boyfriend, but they couldn't be a couple because they were celebrities in the public eye and they're not allowed to get married. So they had problems and they were forced apart, and she had a number of boyfriends over the years since, like Hong Kong people, including the famous actor Choi Man-chuk, Vincent Zhao, whatever you want to call him. But she could never find the right man to marry and settle down with. And so she refused to have the hysterectomy, which would have removed her cervix and removed the cancer, and she probably would have recovered. Anita makes no reference to this whatsoever, but she refused to take medicine, she refused to have chemotherapy. She'd seen her sister go through a living hell taking the meds and going through the chemo and what it did to her, and she still died anyway. And Anita just said, I'm not going through that, just let whatever will happen, happen. I think she was just very depressed, and especially following the death of Leslie Chung, who committed suicide the year before. I think she really felt that she had nothing left to live for. This is something else that the film Anita gets wrong. They do make reference to Leslie, he's in it for a few minutes, they have a few scenes together, but he's not in it very much. And if you look at True Life, they were big brother and big sister, and they were named that way partly because they were like a couple. They were very, very, very close. You can't overstate how close they were. In fact, if Leslie hadn't been gay, then they might well have been lovers. I think they probably would have been. When she was offered the film Rouge, she said, I'll only do it if Leslie can be in it. They made a pact with each other that when they become famous, there'll be guest appearances at each other's musical concerts, which they were. They even made a short film together for the Hong Kong government, a 35-minute anti-smoking film, which was the first film that Leslie ever directed, which I didn't know about until this week.
同我鬥妖咁話啦喎，
點啫阿姐？
點啊哥，對唔住咯，我講錯説話。
平時冇噶嘛，同你唱出嚟你自己繞一輪咁咧，就講一輪八完一輪咁，你又走又唱，咁我跟住上嚟嘅啫嘛。
好啦，講妖我唔夠你，講一樣嘢我都唔夠你，八啊！人來再尋苦海，想把冰山撇開，
無謂再抑壓心底愛。
冰山又在，冰沙青山劈開，
能讓你舒壓心底愛。
冰山斷開，劈開救災。
如果真的太好，如錯看了都好，不想證實有沒有過傾慕。
And they really were very, very close. So that's another thing that Anita gets wrong. They do make reference to him, but they don't show how close their relationship was. They were like brother and sister. And I think that's a real failing of the film. Anita had a reputation for being somewhat of a diva. And this, again, was alluded to in Anita, but they didn't really show much of it. There's one scene where an interviewer is asking her questions and she says, "Stop the recording. These aren't the questions you said you would ask me. Get a producer down here." And I think that it needed more of that to show what a feisty spirit she had, and that she wouldn't put up with other people's crap. And the whole experience of watching Anita just left me feeling it was a bit of a damp squib. It didn't move me, it didn't make me feel things here in the way that it should have done. I do agree with where they ended it, with her last concert. A few days before she died, she had a final concert, and it ends with her going up the stairs in her wedding dress and saying, "I love you all, goodbye." And that was really the perfect place to end Anita, I agree with that. However, I would have liked to have seen what happened after that. I would like to have seen one more episode where they have the aftermath of her death, where they show the real life footage of the people coming out to the funeral, for example. There are thousands of people lining the streets, and I can't really find much about her funeral on the internet, and I can't find any real tributes to her. One thing on the internet that really moves me every time I see it: after Leslie Cheung killed himself, the 4 Heavenly Kings, the biggest singers in Hong Kong, got together to pay tribute to him, and they sang his song From a Better Tomorrow. And you can see in their faces a raw emotion, you can see them holding back the tears, and it's just one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen. And I would have liked to have seen that kind of stuff about Anita, because people loved her so much.
輕輕笑聲，在為我送溫暖。你為我注入快樂強電。輕輕說聲，漫長路快要走過，終於走到明媚晴天。聲聲歡呼躍起，像紅日發放金箭，我伴你往日笑面重現。輕輕叫聲，共抬望眼看高空，終於青天優美為你獻。
And it would have been nice to see the real life footage of all of this stuff that followed her death, because I've never seen it and I can't find it. There was a concert that was done 10 years later where they had many of her friends on stage singing her songs, and at the end they all sing her famous song of Sunset, and it includes Andy Lau, Aaron Kwok, Eric Chang, Jackie Chan, Jackie Chung, and that was really nice to see, but it's not the same as after it's just happened, when everything's so emotional. So it would have been nice to have seen all of that stuff that followed. One way that I think Anita could have been much better than it was, they have very small snippets of clips of the real Anita Mui here and there, totaling a few minutes throughout the running time. And what I think they should have done instead was flipped it on its head. I feel that they should have had a lot of real footage of her, like behind the scenes stuff, concert clips, her working on the movies, interviews. There is a lot of it out there. If you look on the internet, you can find lots of clips of her singing. You can find some good interview clips, like proper 10-minute interviews. And it would have been interesting to see all of that stuff with subtitles as a non-Cantonese speaker. I know the movie was made for the Hong Kong market primarily, but it would have been nice to have seen another version aimed more at the foreign market for people who don't know the story already, who don't know all of this stuff about her, that actually told you more about her than it does. I would have very much liked to have seen that. And then they could have put dramatizations to link the parts together in between. So I feel that was a real failing of it. So overall, I feel to call it an Anita Mui biopic is not correct, because a lot of it is not correct. They fudge things too much, sometimes for political reasons, and sometimes I just don't know why. If you like Anita Mui or not, it is worth seeing. It's quite well made. There are a few good moments in there. There's only a couple of moments which really hit me here and moved me, but mostly it was just kind of flat. So anyway, you should see it and make up your own mind. I think that's all I have to say about it. Whether you agree with me or not, please leave your comments down below. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching, everyone. Have a nice day.